Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. A figure lay motionless on the table, draped in light blue surgical sheets. Only their face was visible, the youthful features of someone on the cusp of adulthood, eyes closed peacefully as if in deep slumber.
Are we ready to begin?
The lead surgeon's voice was muffled behind his mask as he addressed the team assembled around the table. Murmurs of assent rippled through the group. Nurses double-checked IV lines and monitors, while the anesthesiologist carefully adjusted medication levels. This was no ordinary procedure. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before. All right then, let's make history. The surgeon picked up a scalpel, its edge glinting under the bright lights. With practiced precision, he made the first incision. Hours passed as the team worked tirelessly, their focus unwavering despite the groundbreaking nature of what they were attempting. Monitors beeped, instruments clanged, and hushed voices conferred as they progressed through each delicate stage. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, the surgeon stepped back and let out a long breath. I think we did it. He looked around at his colleagues, a mix of exhaustion and elation on their faces. Now we wait. The figure on the table remained still, chest rising and falling steadily. But beneath that peaceful exterior, changes were already beginning. Changes that would alter the course of a young life forever. Sunlight streamed through gossamer curtains, painting warm patterns across rumpled bedsheets. A figure stirred, stretching languidly before sitting up with a start. For a moment, confusion reigned as unfamiliar sensations assaulted newly awakened senses. Long strands of chestnut hair fell across vision, not quite in focus. It worked, came a soft whisper, voice higher and lighter than before. I'm me. Finally me. Jasmine, for that was her name now, swung her legs over the side of the bed, marveling at how different everything felt. Her entire center of gravity had shifted, her skin more sensitive to the cool morning air. She stood carefully, wobbling slightly as she adjusted to her new body. The full-length mirror across the room beckoned, and she made her way over with tentative steps. The reflection that greeted her was both familiar and utterly foreign. Gone was the lanky, uncomfortable frame she'd lived with for so long. In its place stood a young woman with delicate features and gentle curves. Jasmine ran her hands over her face, tracing cheekbones and lips that were subtly reshaped. Her eyes were the same deep brown, but framed by longer lashes. She turned this way and that, taking in every angle of her transformed self. A knock at the door startled her from her reverie. "Jasmine? Are you awake, honey?" Her mother's voice was filled with a mix of concern and excitement. "Yes, Mom. You can come in." The door opened slowly, revealing her mother's anxious face. For a long moment, the two simply stared at each other. Then her mom rushed forward, enveloping Jasmine in a tight embrace. "Oh, sweetheart, look at you," she murmured, voice thick with emotion. "How do you feel?" Jasmine considered the question, taking stock of her body and mind. "Different," she said finally. "But, right, like I'm finally in the skin I was meant to have." Her mother pulled back, brushing away happy tears. "I'm so glad, honey. I know this wasn't an easy decision, but seeing you now, I know it was the right one." They spent the morning talking, laughing, and adjusting to this new reality together. Jasmine's father joined them later, his gruff exterior melting away at the sight of his daughter's joy. As the day wore on, however, a new worry began to gnaw at Jasmine. Tomorrow she would return to school. No longer Huxley, the quiet, withdrawn boy, but Jasmine, embracing her true self. How would her classmates react? Would she be accepted or face ridicule and rejection? Sleep was elusive that night as she tossed and turned, scenarios both wonderful and terrible playing out in her mind. When dawn finally broke, she rose with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Standing before her closet, Jasmine carefully selected her outfit. soft blue jeans that hugged her new body, paired with a flowing lilac blouse. She applied a touch of makeup, just enough to enhance her natural features. Taking a deep breath, she headed downstairs where her parents waited. Their encouraging smiles bolstered her courage as they piled into the car for the drive to school. The familiar brick building loomed ahead all too soon. Jasmine's heart pounded as she stepped out of the car, acutely aware of the curious glances already being cast her way.
"Remember, we love you no matter what,"
her father said gruffly, giving her hand a quick squeeze. "You've got this, kiddo." Squaring her shoulders, Jasmine walked toward the main entrance. Whispers followed in her wake as students did double takes, trying to reconcile this new girl with the Huxley they'd known before. She made it to her locker without incident, fumbling slightly with the combination as she adjusted to more slender fingers. Just as she was about to head to her first class, a familiar voice rang out behind her. "Well, well, if it isn't the school freak all dolled up." Jasmine turned slowly, coming face to face with Justin Hardwick, star quarterback, self-appointed king of the school, and longtime tormentor. His sneer was as ugly as ever as he looked her up and down with disdain. "What's the matter, Huxley? Couldn't hack it as a dude, so you decided to play dress-up?" Justin's cronies snickered at his barbed words. For a moment, Jasmine felt her old insecurities rising up. But then something shifted inside her. She was done being afraid, done hiding who she truly was. "My name is Jasmine," she said, voice clear and strong, "and I'm more myself now than I've ever been." "Your sad attempts at bullying won't change that." Justin's face darkened with anger. He stepped closer, using his height to loom over her. "Listen here, you little... Is there a problem?" The stern voice of Mr. Caldwell, the vice principal, cut through the tension. Justin immediately backed off, plastering on an insincere smile. "No, sir, just welcoming our new... classmate." With a final glare at Jasmine, he slouched off down the hall. Mr. Caldwell turned to Jasmine, his expression softening. "Are you all right, Miss Clark? We want to ensure your transition back to school goes smoothly." Jasmine nodded, touched by his use of her new name and title. "I'm okay, thank you. I won't let a few ignorant comments get to me." As she made her way to class, Jasmine felt a newfound strength flowing through her. She'd faced her first test and come out stronger. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she could face them. The day progressed in a whirlwind of stares, whispers, and the occasional supportive smile. By lunchtime, Jasmine felt drained but determined to keep her head high. She scanned the crowded cafeteria, wondering where to sit. "Jasmine, over here!" She turned to see her best friend Zoe waving enthusiastically from a corner table. Relief washed over her as she made her way over, grateful for this anchor of normalcy. Zoe enveloped her in a tight hug. "Look at you, you look amazing, girl. How are you holding up?" Jasmine sank into a chair, letting out a long breath. "It's been intense, but mostly okay. Justin tried to start something this morning, but Mr. Caldwell shut it down." Zoe's eyes flashed with anger. "That Neanderthal never knows when to quit. Don't let him get to you, Jazz. You're twice the person he'll ever be." As they chatted, Jasmine began to relax. This was still her best friend, still the same easy rapport they'd always shared. Maybe things wouldn't be so different after all. Their conversation was interrupted by a hesitant voice. Excuse me, Jasmine?" She looked up to see Ethan, a quiet boy from her English class. He shifted nervously from foot to foot, clutching his lunch tray. "I just wanted to say, I think what you did is really brave. And if you ever need someone to talk to or hang out with, well, yeah." He finished awkwardly, a blush creeping up his neck. Jasmine felt a warm glow in her chest. "Thanks, Ethan. That means a lot. Would you like to join us?" His face lit up as he slid into an empty chair. As they talked, Jasmine realized this was the first real conversation she'd ever had with Ethan. How many other connections had she missed out on, hiding behind walls of fear and insecurity? The rest of the week passed in a blur of adjustments and small victories. There were still whispers and stares, but Jasmine found herself caring less and less. She was finally comfortable in her own skin, and that confidence seemed to radiate outward. Even her schoolwork improved as she threw herself into her studies with newfound enthusiasm. No longer distracted by constant discomfort and dysphoria, she found she could focus better than ever before. It was in chemistry class that Jasmine first noticed something odd. As she carefully measured out reagents for an experiment, she felt a strange tingling in her fingertips. The liquid in the beaker began to swirl of its own accord, forming intricate patterns before her eyes. Startled, she jerked her hand back. The movement stopped immediately, leaving no trace of the mysterious phenomenon. Jasmine blinked, wondering if she'd imagined it. "Everything all right, Miss Clark?" Mr. Reeves, the chemistry teacher, peered at her with concern. "Yes, sorry, just a small spillage." She quickly mopped up a few drops that had splashed onto the workbench, pushing the strange occurrence to the back of her mind. But as the days went on, more inexplicable things began to happen. Plants seemed to perk up as she walked by, their leaves reaching toward her. Small objects would occasionally shift or roll when she concentrated on them, and always that tingling sensation in her hands. At first, Jasmine tried to rationalize it away. Coincidence, tricks of the light, her imagination running wild with the stress of her transition. But deep down, she knew something profound had changed within her. It came to a head one afternoon as she walked home from school. Lost in thought, she didn't notice Justin and his friends until they had her surrounded. "Well, if it isn't little Miss Special Snowflake," Justin sneered, blocking her path. "Think you're so much better than everyone else now, don't you?" Jasmine's heart raced, but she stood her ground. "Leave me alone, Justin. I'm just trying to get home." He stepped closer, looming over her. "Maybe it's time someone taught you a lesson about—" His words cut off abruptly as a gust of wind whipped up from nowhere, swirling around Jasmine like a protective cocoon. Leaves and debris pelted Justin and his cronies, forcing them to shield their faces. Jasmine stared at her hands in wonder as she felt that familiar tingling, stronger than ever before. Somehow she knew she was causing this. With a thought, she directed the wind to push her tormentors back, giving her space to slip away. She ran all the way home, mind reeling with the implications of what had just happened. As she burst through the front door, her parents looked up in alarm. "Honey, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Her mother rushed to her side. Jasmine caught her breath, trying to find the words to explain. "Mom, Dad, something's happening to me. Something impossible." Over the next hour, she recounted everything. The strange occurrences, the tingling sensations, and finally the incident with Justin. Her parents listened with growing amazement and concern. "It must be connected to the procedure," her father mused. "We knew there might be unforeseen side effects, but this is beyond anything we could have imagined." Her mother squeezed her hand. "How do you feel about all this, sweetheart? It must be overwhelming." Jasmine considered the question carefully. "Scared," she admitted, "but also excited. I mean, if I really do have these abilities, think of all the good I could do with them." Her parents exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, her father nodded. "We'll need to contact Dr. Emerson and her team. They'll want to run some tests, try to understand what's happening. But Jasmine, you need to be very careful. If word of this gets out—" She nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I know, Dad. I'll be discreet." That night, lying in bed, Jasmine held out her hand and concentrated. A small breeze rustled the curtains, then grew stronger, swirling around the room at her command. She grinned, marveling at this newfound power. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew her life would never be the same. But for the first time in her young life, Jasmine felt truly, completely herself. Mind, body, and spirit, finally in harmony. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of tests, consultations, and clandestine practice sessions. Dr. Emerson and her team were fascinated by Jasmine's abilities, running countless scans and experiments to try and understand the source of her powers.
It seems the procedure didn't just alter your physical form, Dr. Emerson explained, poring over a stack of test results. It's changed your very cellular structure at a fundamental level. You're channeling and manipulating energy in ways we've never seen before.
Jasmine nodded, only half understanding the technical jargon. What she did understand was the growing strength and control she felt every day. Under the watchful eyes of her parents and the medical team, she pushed the boundaries of what she could do. She learned to create localized wind currents, to levitate small objects, even to influence the growth of plants. Each new discovery filled her with wonder and excitement. But even as she reveled in her newfound abilities, Jasmine was acutely aware of the need for secrecy. She couldn't risk word of her powers getting out, not when she was still adjusting to her new life and identity. At school, she worked hard to maintain a low profile. She threw herself into her studies, grateful for the mental clarity that came with finally being comfortable in her own skin. Her grades improved dramatically, earning approving nods from her teachers. Her social life blossomed as well. Free from the crippling dysphoria that had plagued her for so long, Jasmine found herself more open and outgoing. She strengthened her friendship with Zoe, bonded with Ethan over shared interests in science and art, and even made a few new friends. But not everyone was happy about Jasmine's transformation and growing confidence. Justin, still smarting from their encounter weeks ago, seemed determined to make her life miserable. He and his friends would make snide comments in the hallways, knock her books out of her hands, and generally try to intimidate her at every turn. Jasmine did her best to ignore the harassment, reminding herself that Justin's behavior stemmed from ignorance and his own insecurities. But it was wearing on her, adding stress to an already complex situation. One afternoon, as Jasmine was leaving the school library, she rounded a corner to find Justin waiting for her. His hulking form blocked the hallway, a malicious glint in his eyes.
Well, well, if it isn't the school freak, he sneered. Thought you could just waltz in here and change everything, didn't you? But you're still just a weirdo playing dress-up.
Jasmine felt her anger rising, along with the now familiar tingle of power in her fingertips. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm.
Move aside, Justin. I don't want any trouble.
He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound.
Too bad, freak. Trouble's what you're gonna get.
As he stepped forward menacingly, Jasmine felt her control slipping. The air around them began to stir, papers on a nearby bulletin board rustling ominously. Justin's eyes widened in confusion and a hint of fear. What the hell? The wind picked up, swirling around them in a tight vortex. Jasmine's hair whipped around her face as she stared Justin down, no longer afraid. I said, move aside. Her voice was low and dangerous, laced with power. For a moment, Justin stood frozen, caught between anger and growing panic. Then self-preservation won out. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet in his haste to get away. As he disappeared around the corner, Jasmine let out a shaky breath. The wind died down immediately, leaving the hallway eerily still. She leaned against the wall, heart pounding as the adrenaline ebbed away. What had she done? She'd come so close to exposing her secret, all because of a schoolyard bully. Shame and worry warred within her as she made her way home, dreading the conversation she'd have to have with her parents. To her surprise, they were more understanding than she'd expected. You're dealing with so much, sweetheart, her mother said, pulling her into a hug. It's natural that your emotions might get the better of you sometimes. The important thing is that you regained control. Her father nodded in agreement.
We're proud of how you've handled everything so far, Jasmine, but this incident shows we need to work on your control, especially in stressful situations. And so began a new phase of Jasmine's training. In addition to honing her abilities, she now focused on meditation and emotional regulation techniques.
Dr. Emerson brought in experts in various disciplines to help Jasmine develop a holistic approach to managing her powers. As the weeks passed, Jasmine found herself growing not just in power, but in wisdom and emotional maturity. She learned to channel her frustrations into productive outlets, to find calm in the eye of the storm, both literal and metaphorical. At school, the change was noticeable. She carried herself with a new sense of poise and inner strength. Even Justin and his cronies seemed to pick up on it, giving her a wide berth in the hallways. But Jasmine knew she couldn't rest on her laurels. The incident with Justin had been a wake-up call, a reminder of the responsibility that came with her unique situation. She threw herself into her studies with renewed vigor, determined to make the most of every opportunity. It was during a particularly challenging physics lesson that Jasmine had a breakthrough. As Mr. Patel explained a complex concept involving energy transfer, something clicked in her mind. She raised her hand, excitement bubbling up inside her. "Yes, Miss Clark?" Mr. Patel looked pleased at her enthusiasm. "I think I understand, sir. It's like—" Jasmine launched into an explanation, drawing parallels between the textbook theory and her own experiences manipulating energy. She was careful not to reveal too much, but her insights were spot on. Mr. Patel's eyebrows rose higher and higher as she spoke. When she finished, he broke into a wide grin. "Excellent, Jasmine. That's a remarkably intuitive grasp of the concept. Have you considered pursuing physics at a higher level?" The question caught her off guard. In all the chaos of her transition and newfound abilities, Jasmine hadn't given much thought to her future plans. But now, possibilities began to unfold before her. That evening, she broached the subject with her parents over dinner.
"I've been thinking, maybe I could use my experiences to help others. Study physics or biology or medicine. Try to understand what happened to me and use that knowledge to make a difference." Her parents exchanged proud glances. "That sounds wonderful, honey," her mother said warmly. "Whatever path you choose, we'll support you every step of the way."
As spring gave way to summer, Jasmine found herself on the cusp of a new chapter in her life. She had not only survived her transition and the tumultuous months that followed, but had thrived in ways she never could have imagined. Her powers continued to grow and evolve, but now she viewed them as a tool rather than a burden. She dreamed of using her unique perspective and abilities to push the boundaries of scientific understanding, to help create a world where no one would have to struggle with their identity the way she had. On the last day of school, Jasmine stood on the steps of the building, taking in the scene around her. Students rushed by, eager to start their summer vacations. She spotted Justin across the courtyard, his usual bravado notably diminished. Their eyes met briefly, and to her surprise, he gave a small nod of acknowledgement before turning away. Zoe appeared at her side, linking their arms together.
"Ready for an epic summer, bestie?"
Jasmine grinned, feeling a surge of affection for her friend who had stood by her through everything. "Absolutely. I have a feeling it's going to be amazing." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.